Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you're all having a very happy Friday. With me, my name is Rohit. I am the co-founder and president of this company called Bujjify with this cute little logo here. And with me, I have Rekha, who is also one of the co-founders and CEO of Bujjify. And we have our speaker and the expert panel member on Bujjify. Her name is Cathy. Cathy is she's a pediatric occupational therapist, and also she is the owner and the prime driver behind Playful Strides Therapy Inc, which is based out of Milton, Ontario. So here we are here to run the session Infant Care 101, and we are going to talk about some essentials. And Cathy is going to provide her experience and insights that she gained over like decades of uh, like doing her thing. So this is what we are going to talk about during the session. So first we'll start off with a quick introduction. We'll talk about what our company is, and then we'll give Cathy a chance to talk about Playful Strides, how she helps people every single day. And then Cathy will take over, and we will look at some of these crucial concepts like welcoming your newborn, which is newborn 101, eat, sleep, and get lots of love cycle, and then mother's touch. We are going to talk about some of the important and crucial milestones at 3 months old, and also very important items about safe sleep practices, tummy time, and preventing the flat head. And then we will jump into Q&A. I'm hoping that we will be able to spend like 10 minutes at least for question and answers section, where we could answer some of your questions that you may want to, or you may have. So just a couple of things before we start off, like just a couple of logistical items. So all participants will be on mute throughout the session. This is just to give everybody a fair chance of, hearing us the best, and also a fair chance of asking the questions and get through the questions. And the session will be recorded. And the idea is that the recordings will be made available both on Playful Strides websites and Bujjify websites, so that for any future consumption, for any future needs. And then we have the Q&A panel already open, so feel free to jump in and post your questions that you may have already. And just a logistical item is, if you want to see the screen, the slide bigger, so there is an expand button on top right corner. So you should be able to see it when you hover your mouse over it. So you should be able to like expand the screen so that you can see it better. And then finally, you guys have some fun emoji buttons available. So feel free to send your reactions like thumbs up or send your love. So yeah, so that's pretty much it from me. And let's jump into the session. So first, who are we? So our company is called Bujjify. And basically what we do is we are a child development company that's dedicated to promoting healthy and well-rounded child development right from the birth. And our products are called Playrix. Playrix are basically these toolkits that we have created based on scientific research, expert advice, and they are inspired by Montessori philosophy. And each Playrig, it's tailored towards a specific age or a developmental stage of the baby or a child. And each of these Playrigs, they include all the necessary toys and tools for the baby for that stage. And also the Playrigs, they come with a digital companion guide so that the parents have all the crucial information that they need to know. So instead of like parents already they have so much taking care of the new baby, and probably many of us they also need to go back to work after a few weeks. So with all the things going on in their life, having to go through like millions of web pages trying to learn everything child development, it's daunting. So that's why like we provide a bite-sized companion guide that gives all the necessary information that parents must know at that stage. And coming to us, the people behind Bujjify, Rekha Anam, who is also with us today. She is the co-founder and CEO, and my name is Rohit, and I'm another co-founder and president of the company. And quickly moving on to the Playrix, like, okay, what are these, right? How do they look? So basically, these are the toolkits. So we launched our Playrix for 0 to 12 months to start off with. Of course, we have plans to launch the Playrix for like 24 months and 36 months and beyond. But right now we have like from 0 to 12 months, and each Playrix is covers a duration of 2 months in that milestone, in that timeline, and they are targeted towards the milestones, just like I mentioned. Like, for example, we have a rollover Playrix that comes with essentials for the baby to help take the baby to rollover milestone, or a crawler Playrix with all the essentials for that stage, etc. So these are our Playrix. You can learn more about them at our website, bujjify.ca or bujjify.com. And yeah, let's move on to the next slide. And Cathy, you're up for your introduction.
Great. So hello to everyone. My name is Cathy O'Leary. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been doing this for greater than 25 years. I started a company called Playful Strides because I felt families didn't have the education and support beyond the basics when a child was having difficulties. Our company is located in Milton, and we see kids and families from the whole Greater Toronto area. And our focus is to work on managing children's developmental skills so that they can be the best they can be by teaching and sharing ideas and connection strategies to families. Today, we're really here to talk about our very young infants that we see from 0 to the end of 3rd month. And we're glad to support you in any way possible on this. I think this is a fabulous way to provide a Canadian-based intervention and developmental pathway for families so they don't feel so alone or overwhelmed with all the information that's out there on the internet. And that's all I've got to say. You can go to our website if you'd like more information. And you guys are in charge of that. Okay, so we're going to start really at the newborn right now. And I'm going to relate this a bit to computers. So keep that in your head. But I want to say congratulations for anyone who has a newborn or will be expecting a newborn. We look at newborns at 38 weeks to 16 months, or sorry, to 12 weeks is sort of the newborn timeframe. And at this point in time, you're getting to know each other. Every child has their own sort of temperament, and they learn different things from their family members. And you're kind of learning the dance together at this time. Dr. Harvey Karp, who wrote the book called The Happiest Baby, usually says that there really should have been a 4th trimester. The first 3 months of a child's life, they're really not organized. So it's not like you're going to have a baby and you're going to have an organized child who's going to eat on a schedule, etc. Because at this point, if we could, these babies would still be in the womb for another 3 months. So to use a computer an analogy, we basically say newborns have a new operating system that is coming online very slowly. And they get their input for their operating system through experiences. As a caregiver, you provide the right experiences at the right time in the right way, and the child integrates that information as new learning. And these links are from experiences in the brain. These links from experiences to the brain activity support the child's growth and development. And in this slide, you're looking at an infant who's about 10 hours old. And you can see his eyes aren't really engaged yet because his visual system, although it's getting information, the brain's trying to figure out what to do with it because it doesn't have an operating system that's giving information at this point. What they also have great hearing, because hearing actually develops in utero and is present in utero. So, but they actually can't process what they hear because they need experiences to figure out what it means. Where they really shine is smell, touch, and smell and touch basically are the 2 big ones. So they're not really relying on what they see. What they're relying on is when something is uncomfortable and someone fixes it, I feel safe. And that's how kids learn to connect with people around them. So this circle of communication of baby coos, you coo back, and they learn that connection. That's called a circle of communication. And what we really want is for children to feel connected to the people around them that are important. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so at this point, babies are learning, I eat, I sleep, people love me, and I repeat. So I eat, I sleep, I'm wet, mom changes me, I feel good, I eat, I sleep. At this point in time, they may cluster feed, meaning that they'll eat like for 10 minutes, sleep for 20, eat for 10, because they're growing. And they may be getting exhausted in their eating, so they eat and fall asleep. And this is not unusual in the newborn phase, that kids are learning the skill of eating. We also are learning that cry means they're hungry, and that cry means they're irritated, and that cry says, pick me up. And that changes over time. An infant cry, like a newborn cry, is more of a la. It's that one sound they make over and over again, and it means fix this. But then they start to learn to pull those different thoughts together. And a cry with a distress is more feed me, and a cry with a lower pitch is pay attention to me. And by us learning to read them and them being able to read us, we do well in this. There was a question about eating and stimulation. So I'm going to answer those because we're on this slide. Children, as newborns, cluster feed. They eat a lot, but they don't eat much each time. So there isn't a set schedule with eating. It really should be eating on demand. Now, if a child hasn't eaten for a period of time and they're really sleepy, you may be encouraged by your physician to wake them up. That is a conversation with your healthcare professional. How much stimulation should a child have? Well, it really depends on the child. So we have to read the cues of a child. If they're looking at you and they're engaged, they're ready for stimulation. If they're pushing away, turning away from you, going really disinterested in their face, it means it's too much. So it's more of a dance between the child and parent or child and caregiver on how much information to give at one time. But typically, I must tell you, it's really boring playing with an infant because they're really boring. All they want to do is kick their legs and look at you. And that can be great because they're so bonded to you that they want that, but there's not a lot of back and forth in the infancy. So you're looking for 2 to 5 minutes, and maybe on a good day for a 4-month-old, a 10-minute interaction multiple times a day. You're not looking at a whole bunch of support all at once. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to go to my copy of the slide so I'm on the same page. So when a newborn comes into the world, they move from a very tight space, the womb, to where they have a limited effect. The world has limited effect on them, so gravity's not pulling on them, etc., to this world of sounds and sights and smells that can be very distressing. And we have a built-in system to help us feel regulated. And what you're going to see on the left is a picture of a very brave mom who probably within a couple hours of birth got into an MRI machine with their newborn. And what you see on the mom's brain, which is the squiggly stuff, is all her thinking parts of her brain. And then on the infant's brain, you can see there's almost no squiggles. That's because the operating system doesn't have any thought processes yet. But the white parts of the brain are mimicked on both of them. They're the same, they're matched. And the reason they're matched is that connection is body to body, is chemical in nature. And this is bonding, is what you're seeing here. Now, just because you at birth maybe didn't get to be with your baby right away, doesn't matter. That repeated touch, smell will help with the bonding experience. And this is actually oxytocin being released to calm a baby. And you can see the mom on the right in the picture with the baby just being on the mom is very calming and regulating. So touch is really important, and smell is really important when you don't have great eyes and you don't have great processing of hearing. And that's all I want to say on the slide. So we can switch slides, please.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that like we read about the touch and smell in so many books, and even Rekha and I, like we talk to experts, we heard about it, but actually seeing a picture from an MRI and seeing the picture of a brain lighting up, that's powerful.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it is quite interesting because they've repeated this multiple times, and it's the same thing has happened multiple times, which is fabulous.
That's
I just need,
powerful.
yeah, I just need the next slide. Oh, it's bouncing. There we
Yeah.
go. Okay, so you see a picture of he's about, I'd say, 2 months old in this picture, and this is what children do by 3 months. And I'm going to talk about that at the end. I'm just going to start with what happens. So when newborns are born, they come out of that cramped space and their arms and their legs are tight. And we would use the word contracted, but they're just flexed. And that flexion allows them to suck on a bottle or breast because that flexion pattern is needed for drinking. And that's what babies do. So that flexion is really important. When they come out and are affected by gravity pulling on them, by kicking and moving against gravity, they kind of straighten out their bodies. And we need that straightening out because without that, we would be little people that were stuck like this, and we wouldn't be able to use our hands, and we wouldn't be able to use our bodies. So kind of they spend that first month kind of stretching out and waving their arms, but they don't actually know they have arms at this point. They're a mouth with things that hit them, and they can't figure out where they come from. So as gravity pulls on them and they stretch out their body, they learn to work into extension. And that extension is how they get head control. And the first skill a child gains, other than learning to track something with their eyes, is they learn to work and gain head control. By about 4 months of age, a child begins to have fairly good head control. Between 8 weeks and 16 weeks, they'll get gain head control. This does not mean you do not support that head. You still want to have support in that head whenever they're upright, because if you turn and you're holding them, they may be able to hold their head up, but you've turned their head to the side and they may not be able to control it. So in their first 4 months, they learn to turn their head towards bright colors and lights because that's the first thing the brain learns. Particularly red and black are the two colors that work best for them, and things that move. That's what the brain can process. They start to recognize bottle and breast. And the example I give is actually my niece at 2 weeks of age. They had a bottle making machine, and she would fuss, and she'd hear the machine start and she would settle. And then she'd hear the machine finish and she would fuss again because she recognized that that meant I'm going to be fed. They do respond quickly to their mother's voice over their father's voice because they've heard their mother's voice for a very long period of time in utero, but they do also respond to dad's voice. They make cooing sounds that don't mean anything. They're just who, and someone says something to them. We have this neat thing in our brain called mirror neurons. And so they're nerve cells that mirror what they see. So if you coo, they coo. And if you stick out your tongue, they stick out their tongue. You smile, they smile. And that's actually the beginning of social engagement with children. They start to bring their hands together, but they, as this infant is doing in this picture, but they don't actually, they just feel their hands. They don't actually know they're their hands at this point. They can wiggle and kick with their arms and legs. When they're on their belly, which I'll show you, they can lift their head and place it. And when you say, oh, it's okay, they'll settle to speech. And they will cry differently to show hunger, pain, and being tired. So this is the real beginning, putting it together for children, recognizing by about 4 months of age, they're ready to be born, right? They're like an animal that's born at that point. They have some skills. Our infants from 0 to 4 months have no skills, and they're completely dependent on adults for their support. Can we go to the next slide, please? I have to go to mine. So here's a good example of an infant about 2 months of age moving in a tight flex body. You can see his knees and hips are really tight, and his elbows and shoulders are still really tight. And he's not yet straightening his arms and legs. He continues to be tight from his hips to his toes. And he has random hand and leg movements. You can see the random movement of the arm, especially when they're excited. Now, I want to remind you that flexion's really important. So when a child's having problems eating, by tucking their hands in and tucking their knees in, they can suck better, so they can be more successful in eating. It also organizes their body so that they can focus on eating. I'm ready for the next one. So at about 3 months of age, children can start to pull their head up and bob it. They're kind of really cute when they do it. They bob, but they don't have trunk support. So they kind of lean into any surface they're working off of. So if they're on the ground, they're kind of on their back. They may bring their hands together, but if they're on their front, they kind of sink into the surface and they'll nuzzle their head into the surface that's there. And that's just where their skills are. They need support to get their head up on their belly because it's a harder position. But on their back, they start to show some really nice skills in being able to bring their hands together, kick with purpose, and they're starting to learn a little bit about autonomy, that I can move my arm, but they don't always, it's random, and they don't always know that they're successful. Can we go to the next slide? So I wanted to talk a little bit about safe sleep. So back in the 90s, the research really supported children sleeping on their back to reduce the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. And it had a really large effect on children dying suddenly, which is fabulous. And so the recommendations are that children are placed in a crib without extra blankets, that they are laying on their back, that they don't sleep attached to their parent, they can be beside their parent. And it's because of the carbon dioxide buildup in the area when you sleep, as well as heat. Those are the two reasons they have children sleep separately. And typically children throughout the world are swaddled from 0 to 3 months. Some children are swaddled longer, and that's because my body is flexed and I can't lie flat on my back really easily. So when you swaddle me, I have compression in my body and I feel safe like I did when I was in the womb. So that is the position for sleep. Now, the issue became when children were put to sleep, the PR for it was back to sleep, and the other side of the poster was belly to play. And because the posters were put on walls, parents put their kids on their back. And then we started seeing a lot of children who lacked hand skills, eye-hand coordination skills as they got older, and they had flat heads. So although back to sleep is important, we need to mitigate the always lying on our back with other positions. So we're going to talk about how do we help children when they're not sleeping and sleeping should be flat in a crib or on the floor. It shouldn't be in a container. It shouldn't be in an infant car seat, and it shouldn't be in an infant carrier, swing, etc. They should be lying flat. That is the safe sleep protocols. When we move on, if you go to the next slide, please. The other part of this is tummy time. And so tummy time should start like right at birth, and children should be on their back to sleep. Back to sleep, belly for 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning, up to 3 to 4 times a day. And then we expand that over time. Tummy time does not have to be on a flat surface. It can start on top of a parent. It can be on an incline, but the idea is you want them to be working towards lying flat. This position can be really hard for children. So what we can do, and I have a lovely diagram here or thing, you can take a receiving blanket and make a roll and just put it under the baby's arms, just under their armpits, and that will help them and help you feel more comfortable because they will sort of conform to it and begin to push off the surface. Our goal is to remove this as quickly as possible within a couple weeks when they gain strength. What happens when we lie on our belly is we actually start to use our eyes and hands together over time, which helps with reading down the road, eye-hand coordination, picking up a pencil, and learning to crawl. From an infant point of view, it stretches out these muscles that are very tight in the chest so that they can reach and regard their hands when they're on their back. So it is important that kids get on their belly, and the kids who aren't on their belly are the kids I see. We can actually track children back who have fine motor issues to children who did not crawl, who did not go on their belly because they fussed. If you find the fussing bothers you, you can put them on you and let them lie on you and do tummy time until they are less fussy. The other thing you can do is, because we are regulating these children through recognizing their cues, is pick them up and then put them back down at another time. So shorten the sessions, but make them more frequent. Can we go to the next slide, please? So it doesn't take long. This is a 1-month-old baby who's popping his head up, and then he's going to plop it back down. So his head comes up, he looks around, he plops it down. And that is pretty common until they build up the strength to hold themselves up. But what's happening is his arms are acting like a nest to hold his head up in this position. And he's cradling them by the muscles here, which is fabulous. And you can see he can look in front of him now. Babies are actually pretty blind. They can see kind of a foggy picture of their parent at birth. By about a year, they have clear vision for far away, but they don't have good up-sight vision until they're around 3 or 4, and their full vision doesn't come into place until 7 years of age. So we're just beginning, but we're starting at a good point here. Can we go to the next slide? So then we talk about flathead, which everybody is always worried about. So flathead, which is also called plagiocephaly, is related to the molding of the skull. And it's from children who have been put in a position and consistently in that position so that gravity has changed the shape of their skull. It's more an issue when it's lopsided, when one side is rounded and one side is flat. And that can be related to children who have a tight neck. The term you might hear used is torticollis. So when children have or at risk of this, we typically see there are 2 reasons. One could be a child's born with a tight neck. So this is their preferred position, slightly to one side. And therefore they get flattening on one side because they don't keep their head in the middle, where you've got these 2 little bones at the back that they can sort of sit on when they're, or lie down on. So if they're leaning on one side and you get a flattening on one side, the first thing conservatively they will do is say, hey, how about we not put them on his back so much? So let's get them on their tummy, get them up in an infant carrier where their head doesn't have so much pressure on it. And they might take that same receiving blanket and roll it the other way, so it's longer, and roll it under the shoulder of the child. So I'm just going to roll this a bit. And if I had a child lying down on a surface, I might just put it under their shoulder blade on one side. Let's see on this side. On one side, so that they're slightly tilted off the side that's flattened. And those are the sort of conservative methods that we would follow. If you have concerns about your child's head shape, they will be looked at on their monthly visits to the physician. But if you have concerns, you can go back to your family doctor and say, hey, I'm concerned, especially if your child has problems holding their head in the middle. And then that's a good time to refer to a pediatric physiotherapist or occupational therapist, depending where you live, for them to make sure that they don't have an imbalance in the muscles in their neck. And they can give you strategies. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when children do have flathead, the first thing we try and do is prevent it. And for children who are at risk, maybe they were born early, their head turns to the side, we might use a positioning pillow. These pillows are used under the supervision of a healthcare practitioner. So just don't go buy one. Please make sure you have someone look at them. The pillow actually on the left is called a butterfly pillow, and it comes under the shoulders and brings their shoulders forward and keeps their head more in the middle. They're used a great deal with premature babies just to give them a little bit of flexion because gravity really pulls their weak muscles down. If a child has a head that meets the criteria that they're not developing evenly on either side, they might get a helmet. And helmets are worn for about 6 months of time, 23.5 hours a day, and they are reshaped as a child's head changes. It can be as short as 2 months and as long as 6 months. And it's done before a year. After a year, you don't. The sutures have closed in the brain. The skulls have attached together, and you can't do this. So this is an early intervention. Helmets became more popular after kids were sleeping on their back because the parents weren't putting them on their belly. So you want to prevent it, put them on their belly for parts of the day. And that's all I've got on my notes, but I know you guys have lots of questions. So you can help me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kathy. I mean, that was enriching. Even though, like Rekha and I, we even before starting the company and all, we read a lot. But some of the things that you mentioned just now, those are not written or those are not understood by us in the same way, right? So this
Mhm.
is very enriching. Thank you. So coming to the questions, luckily we have like ample time before the session ends to answer some of the questions. And in any case, I just wanted to mention this to the attendees that in any case we don't get to your question, we are or you have more questions, so you can email us at hello@bujjify.ca, and then we can try to answer some of your questions that way via email. So we'll just go back to the Q&A poll to see like some of the questions. Uh, one is the first one is, what the single most thing that I can do for my baby? I'm sorry, like I'm trying to expand the question here. Maybe Rekha, you can help me a little bit in seeing the question. The
I
first
can,
one.
you want me to answer as you go and you can add in anything? What's the single most important thing I can do for my baby? I think there's enough research out there, neuroscience research out is meet your child's needs. So if they're crying, identifying their needs as you can. So it's that connection is the most important part. If a child doesn't have a pencil grasp at 3, it doesn't matter. But if they know they can turn to mommy or daddy or grandma and they're going to help me, that the ability to be safely and securely attached is priority. The We will down the road talk about don't try and hit milestones early. It's not a race. These things happen developmentally. So if you provide time on the floor and you engage with your child and you when they're hungry you give them food, and when they're wet you clean them up, and when you spend 1 or 2 minutes just connecting with them because they're just so much in love with you, that is the most important piece to it, because that sense of secure attachment is where all learning can happen from. If children do not have that secure attachment, it is much harder for them to learn.
Perfect. Hope that answered your question, Mega. So we'll move on to the next question that is submitted by Skylar. So the question here is wanting to know how much one-to-one time for stimulating a 3 to 4 month old needs.
And I think I kind of answered this before, but I'm going to put it out there again. It depends on your child's temperament. They need some one-to-one time as tolerated by the infant. So infants that are more sensitive need a more sort of chill response to you. They need animation in your face with a quiet voice, and they need that stimulation when they're looking for it. So they're going to turn to you and coo, and you're going to engage with them. You're going to watch them for signs of interest in what they're doing. So it really depends on the child. If you have a child who's like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, they're going to need more stimulation because that's how they feel safe. But a child who's, typically not the first child, you get the second or third child, they're quite happy to watch what's going on around them. They are getting interaction from their siblings as well as from their parents and grandparents. I find the hardest thing is when you have a larger family around grandparents, aunties, and uncles, is actually to get them to back off, because overstimulating an infant makes it hard for them to manage. They need a slow and steady interaction with them that is consistent. So, for example, if you change their diaper every time before you feed them, and you spend a minute or two just talking to them, and if you have one of the play ring boxes and they have some activities in there that you're going to do with them, I'm just going to grab something. Like they might have a book, and you sit and read the book with them every day for a month. That's stimulation. They don't need a whole bunch. They just need your time with them and your undivided time. The biggest thing is not to be on a screen when you're with your child. So walking, what I see a great deal of the time are kids in strollers facing their parent, and their parent has got their screen in their hand. So they're not, the child's like, pay attention to me. Like, hey, I'm over here. And the parent is watching their Facebook or their Instagram. So be aware that you need to actually spend time with your child where you're there with them and not distracted from them. That is our biggest challenge in the clinic.
Perfect. Thanks, Kathy and Skylar. Hope that answered your question. So we'll move on to the next one. So yeah, I would like to learn more about feeding. How much frequency? What if I can breastfeed right away, etc., and sleep?
Okay, so that's a huge question. So I'm going to kind of break it down. Infants feed, so the research is really supporting children feeding on demand. So when they're hungry, they eat for the first 4 months. So if they're eating on demand, that means the frequency is going to be different depending on the day, the week, the month. Children grow and then stabilize and grow and then stabilize. So they eat a lot, then they don't. By about 4 months of age, children should be on a routine of eating every about 3 hours. The research is not supporting going to solids with 4-month-olds anymore. It's back up to 6-month-olds. And any food before a year that's solids should be perceived as practice. It's not for volume. So when I look at feeding for an infant and you're worried about breastfeeding, if you're really concerned about it, I would suggest actually connecting with a lactation consultant or a nurse practitioner so they can go over that, because you should be able to breastfeed right away. But if you can't breastfeed right away, you can use bottles. It's fed is best. I don't care if it's bottle or if it's breast or if it's a tube, they're tube fed or finger fed. It's just as long as they're getting enough nutrition that they have a wet diaper and a poopy diaper a day. Wet diapers throughout the day and a poopy diaper at least once a day. Their sleep is really all over the place in the newborn stage because, as Dr. Harvey Kirk would say, they're in their 4th trimester. They weren't meant to be out yet. So if their sleep can be put into a routine, but they're going to do things kind of in 3-hour increments. They're going to eat, wet, get changed, sleep, and then repeat that about every 3 hours around the clock for the first 6 months. Beyond 6 months, they usually start reducing at least one of those feeds at night. They go down to 1 feed at night. By about 9 months of age, they should be able to sleep through the night. And that's a short answer to that. If you want more information about that, I would suggest actually going to feedingmatters.org. They're a feeding site for parents, and they will provide you with some good information.
Perfect. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, I know it's a broad question, and we could spend days just talking about it, right? But I think you perfectly summarized the answer for it. Okay, we will move on to the next question by Erica, and she's asking, can you review how much tummy time is recommended for a newborn?
So 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Short and sweet. Cool. So we'll move on to the next one, which is submitted by Lovely Sharma. My baby is 10 months and he doesn't do bye and say papa or mama. How to teach him?
So I'm not a speech therapist, but I can tell you, if you have a 10-month-old and they are pointing at things and they are asking you about things by looking at you or looking at something and looking at you, they're communicating. If they're not saying bye-bye and mama and papa, those are all words that have a bilabial in them. So they have a p sound. They have to bring your lips together. So I would suggest, if you're really struggling with that, actually go to your preschool speech and language team to get some information. Because the first thing they'll ask you to do is get their hearing tested to make sure they're hearing it. But if they're saying everything but bye, papa, and mama, then it may be they just have problems bringing their lips together at the moment. We do it by repetition is the best way, but a great program to look into is the Hanen program, H-E-N-E-N, Hanen program. It's actually from Toronto. It's used throughout the world, and it's how to help your child learn to speak. That's the program, and they have nice little vignettes on how to help them on that site.
Perfect. Thanks, Kathy. Now moving on to the next one. It's submitted by Christine, and the question is, do you need to stop swaddling if your baby has early signs of torticollis happening?
No, but you should make sure your swaddling is in midline. So when you're swaddling an infant, you want to make sure that their head's in the middle. Their head's not turned to the side. But the question is, what's happening when they're not swaddled, because it wouldn't be the time that we would worry about it. So the things you can do for a child who's showing signs of tightness in one side is sleep them facing the door one time, face them in the next time. So you take the crib and you set up 2 sleep positions. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you use one, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you use the other, because you want them to have to turn their head to look. When you swaddle a child, it doesn't impact their head, right? It may impact on how much they can turn their neck if they're tight, but if they're turning this way, it might be more related to positioning because of other things like reflux that could be playing on this. It could be a congenital tightness, so they're born tight. So if you're seeing that, it would be a good time to see a physio or an OT, because if you see early, you can address it quickly. If you see late, it's harder to address, becomes a bigger issue. And we follow children who have torticollis into their second year. Like, we follow them for a long period of time, not frequently, but because torticollis can have such effect on their gross motor and their fine motor skills.
Yeah. Thanks, Cathy. And Christine, that hopes answer your question. So we will move on to the next one, which is submitted by Ramita Prasad. So the question is how to differentiate between day and night routine for a newborn, especially during winter when it's dark and gloomy most of the time.
Oh, that's such a question, eh? Okay, so there are different thought processes on this. First of all, a newborn doesn't differentiate between night and day. To them, I'm hungry, I'm not hungry. So if you're trying to get a newborn to sleep through the night, you're not going to be successful just by changing the lighting. If you're trying to wake a child up at night so they'll eat well, turning on spotlights can be helpful. Some children do what's called dream eating, and it's not preferred. Dream eating is when they're kind of asleep when you're feeding them. And the reason is you have a different suck when you're drinking than when you suck on a soother. And they can get uncoordinated and choke on the food without you knowing it, because they need to be awake enough to pay attention to what they're doing. Between the ages of 8 weeks and 16 weeks, you lose your reflexive sucking and you move on to a voluntary suck. So newborns eat reflexively when anything touches their mouth. So nighttime and daytime doesn't really matter for them, but it matters to us, I know, because it's hard to manage on a 3-hour cycle of a child being up. So if it's a real difficulty for you to have a child not sleeping through the night, get your partner to help feed at night so that you can get a break, or have them feed during the day, because it makes no difference to them.
Got it. Yeah, thanks, Cathy. And I'm pretty sure, like, even I had some of these questions, like especially when it's winter and what to do, how do they differentiate and all. But yeah, this is a good.
Remember their vision's really bad, right? So all they get is light and dark. They don't really, until about around a month, they can kind of make out their mother's face, not even their dad's face, just their mom's. So it takes time for that processing to happen. So they don't go, oh, by the way, it seems windy and cold outside. I think it's night because it's dark. That isn't happening. What they're doing is, there's something wrong in my body. Feed me. That's all they're going for at this point.
Right. Yeah. But when you said they're going to recognize only mother's face and not father's face, I was thinking, ouch.
Yes, I know. But it has to do with, typically they see their mom's face more because of feeding. And then around a month, they start picking up the other people that are in their lives. It's not, but the first one is mom's, because mom's in their face more.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next one, submitted again by Lovely Sharma. How to help, sorry, I'm highlighting the question. Yeah. How to help in sleep 10-month when he has cough and cold.
So we're kind of doing 0 to 4 months at this point, but I will give you some information. Over the counter, you can raise the head of the crib that they're sleeping in, just so it's a little easier to breathe. We typically use furniture risers for them. The cribs no longer have wheels, so you can actually put a furniture riser, which is a square piece with an indent that the front legs can sit in, up 2 to 4 inches. That may help them, but beyond that, you really should be talking to your family doctor if they're stuffy, because they'll give you recommendations. The recommendations have changed and it's not within my scope to give you other information.
Perfect. Thanks. Moving on to the next one, which is again submitted. Which is submitted by Sai Deepak. And the question is, can you please suggest some important tips to avoid colic?
Okay, so colic is an interesting thought. So you kind of split colic into two things. Is it just a dysregulated child, meaning that they just can't get comfortable, or is it a child who actually has some gut issues? So more reflex based. So Dr. Harvey Karp has 6 things you do, and they're called the five things. They're called the 5 S's. So swaddling, shushing, giving them a little, they called shake. They could change the word, but just giving them a little rock, side lying them so they're tummy down. So I would be holding my baby swaddled, who's not right now, and I would be holding my baby in my arm, and I'd have my arm here, and I'm giving them a little bit of a rock in their arms, but their tummy side is down from them, and they're facing away from them, and they do a shush sound. So shh can help a baby settle because they're feeling that safety. Now, when they're against you, they're also feeling your heartbeat. So if you're distressed, they're going to be distressed. So you need to stay calm when you're doing this. And if you can't, you can always put your baby down, take a moment. They can cry for a minute. It's not going to kill them. Settle yourself and come back to them. Because at this age, between 0 and 4 months, it can be very frustrating. And we do get that. So reach out to your helpers to give yourself both a break. And if you have a colicky baby, they do better upright bouncing than they do sitting rocking. They do better in a bounce pattern. We actually had my brother sit on the bouncy yoga ball and bounce their baby to sleep. That's how they settled her in an upright fashion, because she was quite, as you would say, colicky.
Perfect. And I know one of my very close friends, they had a baby, and the baby was colicky, and then I know the struggle, right? So I know this every evening, the stress that they would go through. Cool. Thank you for a great question there. So moving on, I think the last one, and also we are at time. So the question is, can a newborn become nearsighted with dim light?
So babies' eyes are too big for their head. So they're, and your skull grows, your eyes kind of stay the same size. And that's why babies have such big eyes, and they look so cute with those big eyes. So babies don't become nearsighted because of dim light. But newborns can't see well enough to be nearsighted or farsighted. They are kind of semi-sighted when they're young. So dim light's not going to affect them, but if they're playing with something, having a lit area that's not glaring would be helpful. But if you're trying to connect with a child at night, putting huge lights on may wake them up too much. So you kind of want to keep the light dimmer. And if they see about 12 inches away. So dim light here is not going to really matter.
Perfect. Okay. I think that's all the questions that we have for now, but also we are just a little over time. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the attendees who joined our session. And this is the first webinar that we are running together with Cathy and Playful Strides as well. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. But also, Cathy, thank you so much. I mean, it means a lot for an expert to be here and answer some of these questions. And when Rekha and I became parents a couple of years ago, right? So we had tons of questions, hundreds of questions, but we didn't know where to go to, who to ask, and all that. But I hope this platform and these webinar sessions, they help at least some of the parents answer some of these questions. Then that's a huge win for us. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, trying to be patient with our questions and answering almost all the questions.
And thank you for the forum. This is a great forum for families to get their information.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what we envision being, just a safe space for parents to ask questions and get answers from right experts so that they can help their children. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a good rest of the day.
Okay. Bye, everybody.